everyone. So today I want to talk about inflammation. I'm going to also share with you some tips and things that you can do to help decrease inflammation in your body and why it matters, why we need to care about that. Hey, I'm Erica Zeal, creator of Core Rehab and the Active Fitness programs. And I love talking about inflammation and other fun topics, and I know last week I talked about hydration, and those tips that I gave you about staying hydrated also can really help with inflammation as well. So when we think of our whole body, right, I love talking about core and fascia and all of that, but the inflammation of our body also plays a role in how our body functions. It's not just one piece. So I really challenge you to think of your body as a whole. You know, we've got all these systems in our body, and it's hard for one thing to function properly without something else. So inflammation plays a big role, and this is something that I address some in my Core Rehab program, specifically when we talk about bloating of the belly, and that can be caused by foods you eat, which can be causing inflammation in the body. And really at the root of it, a lot of disease is caused by inflammation, and inflammation is caused by crappy food that we eat and stress. Those are like two biggies. And sometimes, we could eat the healthiest of all healthiest, but if our stress is so high and you're so stressed for too long, that can also, really, really affect the way the body processes and increase your C-reactive proteins, and the body goes into this fight or flight all the time. And it's great that we have that mechanism, but we don't want to be in there all the time. So, too much stress can lead to, not optimal functioning of the body. And when we're talking inflammation specifically, the gut is a big, big, big factor because that's where we absorb the nutrition for our body. So if we have an inflamed gut, if we feel bloated all the time, that's a good sign that your body is not absorbing optimal nutrition, right? We could be eating super, super healthy, but if things aren't functioning properly in your gut, so you're not absorbing that nutrition, it's not doing your body as much good as it could. Okay, so I want to share with you some easy tips to help work on that. I wrote down some notes so I don't forget, and also so I don't get off track here. But some really big things that we really need to watch out for. And I know for many of you, you probably already know this, but I feel like, especially for me too, on this journey of continuing to learn more about the body, about nutrition, and just health in general, right? We all have things that we can do even better, right? And I feel like for me, that's been quite a process, quite a journey, where I look back, 15 years ago, and I was eating healthy then, but I look back at I look from there to now, and I'm like, I really changed a lot of things. And so I want you to, take the knowledge that you learn and find that like one or two things that you're like, this I can do today. Don't feel like you have to do it all, because honestly, that's not realistic, right? And I want everyone to be successful, and it is a journey. So for some, it's like, okay, you can do a 180 and change it all. But for most of us, it's not reality. So really slowly, making small changes can really lead up to amazing results. And decreasing inflammation or keeping our inflammation lower. A little inflammation is good, right? You get an injury, you fall, and you get a part on your body that swells up. Well, that's not a bad thing because the body is healing, right? But it's this really high levels of inflammation and puffiness that so many can have that leads to the disease long term. So with the foods that we really need to watch out for is sugar. Obviously, we all are pretty familiar with sugar, and again, a little bit here and there, maybe not bad, right? I don't really have a sweet tooth, but every once in a while, for me, it's more my dark chocolate that might have just a little sugar in it, but I really watch that I'm not overdoing the sugar. That's the key to a lot of this, is the balance, right? Obviously, foods such as like trans fats, we really shouldn't be eating those at all, because the body doesn't really properly process them at all, and it can really, really just be a big piece of leading to inflammation in the body. Not to mention, the other big piece of this is like excitotoxins for the brain, like toxins. MSG is a really, really big one, you guys, and I have actually got to this point where if I eat MSG, it really, really affects my stomach, and it was so crazy. I almost had like a response like I do with gluten. So for me, it's become one of those, because I don't eat it, that when it accidentally got snuck in my food once, I was like, oh my, it was horrible. So really be watching out for the MSG, because it's so toxic to the body. And it's also an excitotoxin for our brain. And that's another big thing when we're thinking inflammation is of the gut, yes, of the entire body, but also of our brain. And so there is that link between, like maybe anxiety and depression and things like that. And if our body is more inflamed, those can be exacerbated. So by just decreasing our inflammation, this is where the eating healthy, right? Lots of veggies, some berries, some fruit. Obviously, there's sugar in fruit, so we want to watch we don't overdo our fruit. But it doesn't mean it's bad and you shouldn't eat it, because it's natural, it's real, it's good for you. But eating good fats, eating fish with things that are high in omega-3s can really, really help decrease inflammation. So when we're talking fats and inflammation, it's like, well, what kinds of fats are really, adding to inflammation, and then what kinds of fats can help us to decrease our inflammation? So there's a little bit of a balance. If you eat a lot more processed foods, then you've got to really watch you're not eating things, which we want to obviously minimize our processed foods, but watching, minimizing our omega-6s, and definitely avoiding trans fats if at all humanly possible. Those need to be out 100%. And eating things that are high in omega-3s, taking an extra supplement of DHA, EPA, things like that. But really also watching our gluten, decreasing, if not completely getting rid of gluten, because the gluten is, to me, such a cause of inflammation for so many people. And then we can take it a step farther with grains. So again, maybe it doesn't mean you cut out grains completely. I'm not 100% grain free, but I do minimize them. Definitely don't eat grains at every meal. So, kind of just keeping it in moderation and making sure we're eating, again, lots of veggies, eating vegetables with every meal if possible. That would be ideal. And casein for many which is found in dairy, can lead to more inflammation. So sometimes what you can do, and there's a lot of people that do like Whole30 and things like that, it's like, that more elimination diet. And sometimes for me, I'm like, I might cut something out for a while, see how I feel, see how my body responds, and then add that thing back in. So you can go super extreme and you cut all these things out and then you slowly add them back in. Because sometimes when one thing really bothers our body, it is worse with 2 or 3, right? The gluten and the dairy, and even eggs for some. But again, remember, everybody's bodies are different. So I'm not saying you can't eat those. I'm just saying things to be aware of, to at least start being more aware of. That's really the first step with so much of the health stuff, is I want you to be aware of it, because that's the first step in so many things. That's what I teach a lot when I'm talking about core and posture and stuff like that. It's just really being aware is really, really that first big step. And then from there, what is that change that you're going to implement, okay? One thing I wanted to talk about is, with disease and things like this. And this was just a short little story of like with inflammation in our joints. A lot of people have back pain and joint pains and things like that. And while obviously a big bulk of that I have found is, yes, from poor posture, sitting too much, not optimal movement, misalignment, things like that. But another piece in that is inflammation. And if we have inflammation in our joints, well, then we're more likely to have more pain in our body. So this is where the inflammation also plays a role. And it's not necessarily just the food or just the movement. It can be a combination of all of the above, right? Stress, not getting enough sleep, and what have you. So when I was younger, like teenage years, I had all this knee pain growing up. And at one point the doctors were like, I don't know, it's growing pains, but that was all they kept saying. And they were, one of the doctors, I don't remember who or when exactly, but early teenage years, wanted to say that, well, you have, maybe it's just rheumatoid arthritis at such a young age. And I wasn't an overweight child. And I ate, fairly healthy for that time frame. But of course we could always have done better. And I now know, I have been gluten-free for 6 years, and a little bit off and on before that. I finally realized I need to cut it completely out. Well, I look back and I realized a big part of it was, yes, the knee issue from a fascial and structural perspective, but also it probably didn't help that I was also eating gluten when I shouldn't have been. So that could have also been an extra inflammatory response in my teenage years that was leading to that as well. So we want to kind of keep all that into consideration when it comes to inflammation in our body and pain and things like that. It's not always just one or the other. And we can also hold emotion. I've talked about this before with fascia. We can hold emotion in our body that can lead to pain. So it's not always inflammation, but we can always be working to eating healthier. So we're working to decrease inflammation so that our brain is functioning more optimally, because we want to really keep those toxins out, and so that our gut is functioning more optimally, so that we are really absorbing the nutrition from the good, healthy food that we are eating, going on a regular basis and things like that. And foods such as and I mentioned in the hydration video I did last week about bone broth and collagen, because those can be really good for your gut, and the fact that they can help create even more lining on the inside of your gut as well. So then you have that extra little barrier there. So if you are someone that maybe has suffered with IBS, or just, there's a lot of stomach stuff that goes off and on, and sometimes people don't even realize how good that you could feel, because maybe you're just used to having a little bloating all the time, and maybe you don't go regularly and things like that you really don't understand how good you could feel. Because I'll tell you, if my stomach is sluggish, my GI system, if it's all a little off because either, I got a little extra toxins in a food from eating out that I didn't mean to, but that's the hardest thing with eating out. Even if you try to eat healthy, sometimes you don't have as much control as you do when you eat at home. So obviously eating at home as much as we can is ideal. And going out to eat, kind of looking ahead of times, and if I'm traveling somewhere, try to find a place that serves, organic, locally sustained, foods and stuff like that, so that you are getting, good quality nutrition, things that are made without added toxins such as MSG, which can easily be snuck, especially in sauces. That's one that can be tricky, and it can be snuck in there. So you got to really watch for that. Okay, let's see. So those are just some big ones to really kind of be aware of, and thinking of how it all goes together. So I talk about, obviously, the movement. I've got that up with the link below for those of you that haven't already checked out, where I talk to you about how to start to improve your core strength and your posture. And obviously in my core rehab program specifically, I do address more about the nutrition with a kind of a quick guide to get your digestion started. And so again, that's a big part. If we get our digestion moving more efficiently, we're eating good quality ingredients, and we're watching our stress and we're moving, it's like this little balance, right? So find that one or two things that you feel that you can work on. Maybe it's, okay, I'm gonna try to eat more veggies every dinner, moving forward. Something simple, maybe it's just okay, I'm going to no processed food, or whatever it is that you're okay, this I can do today. That's going to be your best next step to leading an even healthier lifestyle and feeling better. And I just am a firm believer that no matter where you're at today, no matter how you feel, we can always feel better. We can always move better. I was just talking yesterday with a girlfriend about, I was like, it'll be interesting to see with the things that I'm working on. I hope in 10 years I feel even better than I do today, because we're always working to rejuvenate our cells. And while yes, age is one thing that in a sense can work against you, but there's so many other things that we can do that we can work with that aging process and how our body's functioning and our digestion. And I don't know, there's just so much involved that I feel like there's so much that's not even known yet. It's fascinating, but I'd love for you to comment below. What's that one thing that you are going to work on starting today, just to lead an even healthier lifestyle, and for you, so that you can feel even better. So until next week, have a wonderful day.